Men and women are being taken right now. No, they are creating an hybrid army. Hybrids are walking amongst us. Why would God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Sodom and Gomorrah is a nesting site. These entities can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics as we know them.
This information mysteriously disappeared from the internet just days after we recorded this interview. LA will explain their end game and you'll understand why. LA, when I have looked at your materials and the special offer that you're offering to my subscribers, I am utterly shocked because it puts all the pieces together. My family just keeps on hearing me talk about it because I'm going, oh my gosh, these are the missing pieces to end time prophecy. And that really you explain better than anyone else. But I want to share with you just really briefly, fast, LA, a story, something that happened to me when I was 12. Because after looking at your materials, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I was 12 years old. I wasn't a believer in Jesus at that time. And my dad and I were looking into the paranormal and the supernatural. I mean, we obviously were looking for God, but we didn't know that. And so we were, looking at the occult and whatever. But anyway, I started having these nightmares, and in the nightmares, I saw these faces, and the faces I used to describe to people look like when you look into when you look at a doorknob, where the eyes look all of a sudden big. That's what they look like. And so, but the dream kept happening more and more and more and more. They just were staring at me. Mm-hmm. And so then I woke up. And I was terrified and everything. Didn't know what to do because, again, I wasn't a believer. My dad was Catholic, and he prayed. But then it started happening in the daytime. I could see them in the daytime, and they were looking at me. And after I saw what you're about to describe, and what's going on with this phenomena is like it answers a lot of end time prophecy, as in the days of Noah. So. And now, when you explain too, like now Fox is reporting on this more and more, people are thinking, well, why do I need to know what we're about to talk about? Because there's an end time deception going on, and you have to be equipped to talk to people and know exactly what's happening. I mean, it's on Fox, Brett Baer keeps on, and it's happening more frequently, talking about this. So explain these abductions. And what did you think about my dream? Did you think, what was that?
Well, how old were you then?
12.
Yeah, this is, you're right in the window of being, going into becoming a woman. So you're still probably a little prepubescent, but not really. You're right at that. And that's when they love to take people. They love to take boys and girls, sometimes as young as 5 or 6. But when someone is right in that change of life, because they're very confused and they're wide open. The hormones are raging, the whole deal. So that was probably, they were scouting you essentially to see if you were eligible on some level, and for whatever reason they did not take you from what you described.
Right, and let me just say, it did stop, even though we didn't know Jesus, when we started saying the name of Jesus. See, my dad was Catholic. We weren't born again. It actually stopped.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Lord honors that. And you can also say, well, the Lord knows that you're going to become born again. So he's honoring that because there's no time for him. He's outside of space-time. So he knows at some point that, your dad and you are going to you're going to get to know him. So he's just protecting
4 years later.
4 years later. So he's just protecting you because there is no time where he is. Time doesn't exist there as we know it anyway.
So now what is going on with these abductions?
Well, the abductions everything goes back to a Genesis 3:15 narrative, in my opinion. If we, the collective body of Messiah, the body of Christ, if we don't understand Genesis 3:15, we are, in my humble opinion, completely clueless as to the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative. Genesis 3:15 is the gateway for the rest of the Bible. That's why it's imperative, absolutely imperative, that we get and understand that it is a seed war. And we can tap dance around those passages till we're blue in the face. We can say, well, it really doesn't mean that. And we can have that type of a ridiculous attitude, or we can take it at face value. And Genesis 3:15, the pre-incarnate Christ is in the garden. Adam and Eve have just fallen. They've sided with the dragon. Satan. And so you got Satan, Adam and Eve over here, and the pre-incarnate Christ here. And Jesus says to the dragon, your seed, your offspring. Now, you want to take issue with that? Does it mean something other than seed or offspring? It's like, does it? Well, it's not really what it says, all right. Well, really, so what does it say? Well, it really doesn't mean that, because angels can't reproduce, blah, blah, blah. Well, where does it say that? It doesn't. It just says you're not given in marriage, okay? That's all it says. So your seed, your offspring, talking of a dragon, will be at war, at enmity with the seed, the offspring of the woman. Coming from the woman, the proto-evangelium, the first prophecy of Messiah, the first prophecy in the Bible, in my opinion, that we get. The proto-evangelium, the Messiah, will crush the dragon's head. You will bruise his heel. It's the whole Bible. It's the entire Bible. That's the springboard, because Messiah is going to come from the woman. The dragon knows that, and that's why he wants to completely destroy the human race. And that's why it's down to 8 people. You see, if we don't understand this, when we get to Noah's flood, 3 or 4 chapters later, we're scratching our heads going, well, why does he destroy what was so horrible? What was so bad that only 8 people were saved? What does it say? But Noah was pure. Noah was pure in his genealogy. He wasn't sinless. Noah was pure in all his generations. What does that mean? Noah's DNA is intact. That's what it means. And through Noah's line comes Messiah. In other words, it says, I'm not making this up. The whole world was corrupt. Why? Because the fallen angels come down in the days of Jared. This is in the book of Enoch, but also when we read Genesis 6 and you compare that to the book of Enoch, the 6th chapter, the verbiage is almost exactly the same. The only difference in our King James Version, it will say, the sons of God saw the daughters of men. And in the book of Enoch, it says, but the angels of heaven lusted after the women. That's it. It specifically states who the sons of God are. They are the angels. In all of my books, Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood, The Cosmic Chess Match, in Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book, other people have expounded on it. Doug Hamp, Thomas Horn. I mean, the list is not endless, but we've all looked at this, done a deep dive on it. B'nai Ha Elohim, Dr. Michael Heiser, Derek Gilbert, Josh Peck. I mean, the list just goes on. Gary Stearman, how could I forget Gary? B'nai Ha Elohim always refers to the angelic host. It's not the godly line of Seth and the ungodly line of Cain, which is what's taught in the seminary. Well, that's not there in the text. It's not there. In fact, what I should do, and I'm just going to do it, just bear with me real quick, because, you need to hear it for yourself. You just need to understand what it's talking about. Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. He shall bruise thy head, thou shalt bruise thy heel. So let's go to the amplified version of it. And I will put enmity, open hostility between you and the woman, and between your seed, offspring, and her seed, offspring. He, the one coming from the woman, will fatally bruise your head. You shall only bruise his heel. It's the entire Bible. Now what happened, Genesis 6, when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful and desirable, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. So it's plural. So right off the bat, they're doing something that we know is funky. They're taking wives. Who are the sons of God? The B'nai Ha Elohim. Where do we find that phrase again? In the book of Job. What does the book of Job say? They're angels. They're fallen angels. That's what they are. And when we know in the book of Jude, it's so funny, you go online and you watch some of these guys try to take this passage and they'll twist it. They'll torture the text until it says something completely different than what it says. I mean, a fifth grader can read this, right? And understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, but if they don't understand it, then they don't really understand what's going on right now in the end times and what you're about to talk about. And it's happening more frequently, and it's more in the news than ever before. And why? Because Jesus is coming back soon. But this is a big end time prophecy.
Well, it is. But why does Jesus point back to the days of Noah? Why does he point back to the days of Noah and say it'll be like the days of Noah when I return? Out of the entire Tanakh, which the Old Testament he can look at, He points to the days of Noah. What differentiates the days of Noah? Genesis 3:15. Days of Noah. Noah's pure in all his generations. So only 8 people that get on that ark. That's it. And there's a vetting process where the Father God goes, Noah, you, your sons, and your sons' wives. So the idea, in my humble opinion, that somehow one of the wives was contaminated with the Nephilim gene, it never says that. That's, once again, someone is inserting that and assuming that that's what's happening. No, there's a second incursion. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards when the sons of God saw the daughters of men. This seed war, Janie, continues all throughout the Old Testament. The seed war continues until the cross, and then the enemy goes, well, game's over. I just lost, but he doesn't quit. He doesn't quit. And this is where we get to Daniel, the prophet Daniel, chapter 2, verse 43. So we're going to just quick little Bible study, and then we're going to get into the abduction phenomena because I want to settle it. So you got Genesis 3:15, the offspring of the dragon, the offspring of the serpent will be at war with the offspring of the woman. Genesis 6, it completely erupts. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. And also afterwards, as after Genesis 6, there are multiple incursions. Finally, what do you think Sodom and Gomorrah is? Why would God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Sodom and Gomorrah is a nesting site for the Nephilim, absolutely all day long.
Whoa.
And you'll notice, and I wrote about this in my book called The Chess Match Counter Move, the only time throughout the biblical prophetic narrative where we see this blatant destruction, where God comes in and just wipes them out, is with the Nephilim. There's no grace, there's no mercy. With Nineveh, he sends Jonah in there. And Nineveh, I mean, you want to talk barbaric. These guys, you might see your uncle's head on a stake. They would flay you alive and put your skin up on the wall. I mean, these people were crazy, the Ninevites, but they repented, so God didn't destroy them. The book of Jude tells us that in a similar manner, the angels left their first estate and they mingled their seed. I'm paraphrasing here, but they cohabited with men and women on the planet, and they contaminated everything. This is why the Lord just gets some of the animals, they bring them on the ark. Everything else, almost everything else on some level is contaminated in some way, shape, or form. Because we know from the book of Enoch that the angels were doing genetic inbreeding with the animal kingdom. They were doing genetic experimentation with the animals. So this is where we get from Greek mythos, centaurs, minotaurs, and fauns. This is where we get them. This is where we get the Greek pantheon. This is where we get the Egyptian god Anubis and all these weird gods with animal heads and all this other stuff. It's real. That's what we're seeing is the commingling of the seed, and that's a no-no. That's an absolute no-no. You're not supposed to do that.
So
and
hybrids.
Yeah, they're hybrids. Hybrids are walking amongst us. So that's the entry level. Knowing Genesis 3:15 is the gateway to the rest of the Bible. But then we get to the Tower of Babel. We see what's going on. We see the corruption of the seed. We see the corruption in Noah's day and the Tower of Babel. We see Nimrod becoming a Gabor, becoming a Nephilim through ritualistic sex magic. We see later on Sodom and Gomorrah. Why does he destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Because it's a Nephilim stronghold. That's what it is. It's the only time we see this kind of a judgment from a loving, holy God when the Nephilim are present. That's it. The rest of the time, it's grace, and mercy. And here's something to think about.
Wow.
So you go Genesis 6, Genesis 3:15, Genesis 6. Then you bounce up to Jesus, Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. Took me a second there. Mark 13. All pointing back, be like the days of Noah when I return. So now we jump back to the days of Noah. What differentiates the days of Noah? The presence of a Nephilim, the commingling of the seed around the earth. Then we bounce forward from there. The angel appears to the prophet Daniel, and the angel says to Daniel, Daniel, seal up the words in this book until the time of the end. And then he gives us what I would call a supernatural clue. Men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge will increase. Well, if we were to plot on a graph where all this is from the time of Daniel It's flatlined to the Gutenberg printing press, which is where we get the Gutenberg printing press changes everything, because now you don't have 30 monks sitting in a smelly scriptorium writing on vellum. Mm-mm.
And when was that exactly?
In the 15th century, I believe. So you got a flat line until Gutenberg's printing press, and then all of a sudden you get this blip. So now they can print the Bible. The common man can read the Bible as well as other books. And here we go. From there, it starts to climb up like this. When it hits the Industrial Revolution, it's a major spike into modernity where right now as we're speaking, men and women are running to and fro over the face of the earth. That's what the angel says. He gives us that supernatural clue. Daniel, seal up the words in the book until the time of the end. What does the time of the end look like? The angel tells us that the time of the end will be when men and women run to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge will increase. Here we are. What are we seeing? It says in Daniel chapter 2, verse 43, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. This is why Genesis 3:15 is paramount. Unless we get that, when we arrive at the book of Daniel, we're going, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. When we get to Jesus' own words admonishing us, it'll be like the days of Noah. We have no clue what Jesus is talking about. If we hold to the idea that this is the godly line of Seth and the hoochie mamas of Cain creating a Nephilim, how does that work out for you? We will never understand what the Lord himself is warning us. We will never understand what the days of Noah truly were and why the severity of the judgment of the flood. We will never grasp Daniel 2:43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. Cleave is the same word that we get in the marriage contract way back in Genesis. A man will leave his wife. A man's not going to leave your wife. Sorry about that. A man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. A man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Well, that's the same word. Thank you, Jim Williamson, who expounded on that years ago. It's the same word that we get in Daniel chapter 2:43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. No marriage contract. Now, when men and women are being taken, in our film, which is number 4 in the ongoing UFO Film Series, we are the only Christian film company that's doing this. Nobody else. You can watch Ancient Aliens till you're blue in the face, and you'll never hear this.
This is part of the offer, the special offer,
part of the offer,
which we're putting on the screen right now, and there's also a link in the description. But yeah, go on.
Everything is based on the biblical prophetic narrative. Everything, and that's why I spent 15 minutes outlining and going over the biblical prophetic narrative, because now we have the basis, we have the groundwork, we have the foundation to where I want to go. So we know that there's a commingling of a seed. We know that these things were sealed up until the time of the end. We are at the time of the end. Men and women are being taken right now, not because L.A. Marzulli says it, but because Bret Baier and Fox News and all sorts of media are telling us that people are being taken. The abduction phenomenon is all too real.
No. When you said that, and when I looked at your series, I couldn't believe it, because it's like they're saying it more. April 6th, 2023, Bret Baier, and talking about suggesting UFOs and pregnancies. I mean, this is from your information, and then April. It's just like one after another,
right.
And they're
one
talking
after another.
Yeah, more than ever before.
And so when Bret Baier goes on Fox News, he's reading off a teleprompter. He's probably looked at this and said, wow, this is a bizarre story. Has he done the research? I don't know. I've never talked to Bret Baier, so I have no idea. I'm going to state here that more than likely, no. Maybe he knows a little bit, but he hasn't done the research, certainly, that created films like we have.
Oh, so, no, your research is unbelievable.
Type of research. Thank you.
It's in depth.
So Bret Baier states on Fox News on the record that some women who are taken aboard UFOs find themselves pregnant. That's the breeding program. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. So the classic abduction is you're 5 or 6 years old, and all of a sudden the Greys pop into your room, and they float you out of the room, through the ceiling, through the wall, through a closed window. It doesn't matter. These entities can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics as we know them. So they do this. They float you out. Next thing you know, you're undergoing this weird, not experiments, but examination. And they are probing you in every orifice, looking in your eyes, opening your mouth. They're taking samples, tissue samples, sometimes scoop marks. You're basically kidnapped and violated. And they do this to certain people over and over and over and over again till they reach puberty. And that's when things really start to shift. And then at some point, if you're a male, sperm is taken from you. You're violated. If you're a female, you can find yourself impregnated by them. Now you're married, and you find yourself pregnant, and you think, wow, that's pretty cool. Hey, honey, we're pregnant, but you're not sure. And you go to your OBGYN, and there it is. You're absolutely pregnant. Congratulations. And in the 3rd month of your pregnancy, you are re-abducted, and that entity, that hybrid entity, because it's not fully human, is taken from your womb. But the problem is that entity, that hybrid entity, needs someplace to come into gestation. In other words, it needs to come to term. It needs a womb to go into. So they are creating artificial wombs. And before you go, LA, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Let me tell you something, that human beings right now are creating artificial wombs. We are creating artificial wombs. So the fallen ones are creating artificial wombs.
Yeah. Now, when you had said that, I ended up researching, and seeing that, the scientific community is talking about it now.
Yeah, they are. And this ties into number 6 in our film series. So 4 is on the abduction phenomenon. So we take the baby, they've got to create an artificial womb.
Right, which we'll be going into more on another program. Yeah.
So the bottom line is they are creating artificial wombs. And we might be the first film company ever to sort of run that up the flagpole. I've never heard anybody else say it.
No. And in fact, and this is all in the series, the special series that you're offering to my subscribers. But when I saw that of how they're doing that for the artificial womb, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is explaining everything. I'm telling you, it connects all the dots.
Yeah, it does. It does. And, we're working on 7, 8, and 9 in the film series, and then we'll be done unless the Lord redirects our steps with number 9. It's a very in-depth, in-your-face film series. And our mission statement, just so the folks know out there, is to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King Jesus. And that's what we do here. I mean, and say, well, why do we need to know about this? There's really no salvation message here, right? This is the deep end of the pool. Paul even talks about the fact that we no longer need to go over the salvation message because most of you listening know that. Most of you here are saved. If you're not saved, you just ask him into your heart. You say with your mouth, you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and God raised him from the dead, and you ask forgiveness of your sins. That's salvation. And that's step number 1. That's when your toe is just dipping in the pool. You're not even in the pool yet. Okay? Your toe is in the pool. Finally, you're in the shallow end of the pool where a person, a born-again, spirit-filled person is spirit-filled, and they're in the shallow end of the pool, and they're learning about what the guidebook of a supernatural states, what the Bible tells us in its pages. And we're learning, we're reprogramming our thought life. We're learning to put on the armor of God to take every thought captive. That's beginning to grow in the Lord. What we're talking about here is the deep end of the pool, the very deep end of the pool. It's not for the faint of heart.
Right, but the Bible does say to expose darkness. It does.
That's what we're doing. And that's what Jesus came to expose, the works of the enemy, to expose the works of Satan. And that's what we do here.
Okay,
We're
if people may say, okay, but if this happened, how can I prevent it from happening to me? I'd like you to share the story of the woman who felt like she was being taken, and she at first couldn't stop it until she did something, which I think is like a big key in all of our spiritual walk to get the enemy off of our back. Could you share that story?
I've spoken to a lot of abductees in the course of the years, people who are taken. Many of them are even ashamed to come on camera. A lot of them will not come on camera because they're not interested in notoriety. They're ashamed of what's happened to them. They are taken. They are, I mean, that's what it is. They are abducted, they are kidnapped, and they are raped. That's what it is. No matter how you slice it. Now, there's something called Stockholm Syndrome, where after this has happened so many times, you begin to side with your captors. And there are people who do that, but that's not what we're saying. So there was one woman who was being taken, and she was rebuking, and she was still being taken. And then at one point, she realized, being led by the Spirit of the living God, she needed to forgive. And so she shouted out, "I forgive you." And at that moment, it stopped the abduction. Karen is in our film, number 4, which is on the abduction phenomena. Karen becomes the tent pole. What I mean by that, here's that tent pole. The tent is erected on that tent pole. And Karen is the mainstay, the tent pole. Whatever analogy you want to use, everything hinges and kind of flows around Karen's testimony. Karen was taken at the age of 5 or 6, numerous times, and she thought this was normal. And she began to talk about this and try to find out, why is this happening to me? And they threatened to kill her entire family unless she shut up.
Oh.
At 6 years old, they implanted a vision in her mind that her entire family was decapitated in front of her. Yeah. I mean, these are benevolent space brothers? No. These are maniacal, evil, fallen angels masquerading as such. That's what we're looking at.
Okay, this is another reason why we're talking about this, because when you said, these are not benevolent, I'm starting to hear stories like famous people like Goldie Horn talking about, right, oh, my wonderful experiences with aliens. I mean, like they're trying to feed that to people that, that, oh, these are such good, aliens are such good friends. And they're the one, like you had said in the materials, that they want to then finally, what the end game is to say that they seeded us. But they're not benevolent. So I'm sorry.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So go on. I'm so sorry.
And there's no benevolence or no goodwill here in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. Now, people on the other side of the aisle will say, surely, OA, there's some good ones. Show me. People say, well, there's, I was, the tall whites, they seem to be benevolent. They're all part of the same team. It's a black hat, white, good cop, bad cop deal. Don't be deceived. These entities are not extraterrestrial. They are interdimensional. They come from a second heaven. They have one agenda. That is to corrupt the genome. The days of Noah, to corrupt the genome. And eventually when they do show up, and they will show up, look, here's the deal. And folks, you need to understand this. I'm not making this up. All right? I'm not. It's on Fox News and CNN and 60 Minutes. Commander David Fravor. We talked about Commander David Fravor in our UFO films, as well as others. We are on the 18th rung of a ladder of disclosure as we move up. Congress talked about whistleblowers a few weeks ago. And you didn't hear word one about this for the most part. You had to really dig for it on the mainstream media. They just buried it. We don't have a media anymore. We have a managed agenda, in my opinion. We have a controlled narrative that's controlled by a hidden group of people, and they all parrot exactly the same things. Doesn't matter what you watch. So let me ask you something, folks. Why is it that when the Congress got together and Representative Mace is sitting there and examining and asking David Grush, the whistleblower, questions about retrieved UFOs, why is it that no one heard anything? Why is it that the mainstream media didn't carry anything about it? You had to dig for it, which is, of course, what I do. You had to dig for it to find it. So Mace is sitting there, and she asked David Grush a question. And the question is this: When you retrieved crashed UFOs, were there any bodies in these crashed UFOs? And David Grush looks right up at her, leans into the microphone. So the body language is telling me, if this is the microphone and I'm lying, I do this. I turn my head away, or my eyes dart around like this. I look away. I back off from the microphone. Now, what does David Grush do? He leans into the microphone like this, and he looks up at Mace, Congressman Mace, and he goes, yes, there were biologics aboard the crashed UFO. Mace does the follow-up question. Were they human or non-human? Once again, he leans forward, looks right up at her, non-human. So, right. I mean, that is one of the most astounding statements of, the 21st century. Hello? And it's buried. Meanwhile, a week later, Jaime Maussan rolls out the fake mummies, the fake alien bodies in Mexico. That goes viral. That's everywhere. Why did they do that? To deliberately obfuscate everything, to make it so confusing that you can't figure out what the truth is and what is a canard. Jaime Maussan, this is the third time he's done it. He did it with the ferry, and I love Jaime. He's a great guy. He's not here to defend himself, but in my humble opinion, these are fakes. Just like the ferry was a fake, we debunked that in our Watchers series. This was a construct done by a very skilled taxidermist, but we debunked it. Once we got the ferry out, we had 3 veterinarians. We did the research on the thing. And once we found out it was fake, we immediately went to Prophecy Watchers, Sky Watchers, said, hold the presses. It's a canard. It's a fake. It's a construct. It's done by a taxidermist. We broke the story. We did the real research. Of course, the naysayers, well, I always knew it was fake. Well, if you knew it was fake, why didn't you get the ferry out and debunked it?
Right, but in your research,
he got the ferry out.
Right, but in your research, you have found the things that are real. And what we're talking about right now, like with the abductions, I mean, the end game there is hybrids. Now, I'm just like wondering how many hybrids are walking amongst us. And it's like, are they going to be creating a hybrid army? I mean, we don't really know. But
no, they are creating an hybrid army.
Oh.
Well, let me circle back to Jaime, because that went viral. Those fake alien bodies, that went viral. It was all over the internet, all over the mainstream media. It was everywhere. Meanwhile, in Congress, right, our guys are sitting there, the whistleblowers telling us that we've got, bodies from crashed UFOs, and that story is buried. There's a managed agenda. This is what's so imperative about our series, because hybrid beings are walking amongst us. When I asked the late Chuck Messler this a decade ago, I said, Chuck, what about the hybrids? He looked right at me and said, L.A., Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. That's Chuck Messler a decade ago. Satan is outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. Oh. This is exactly what's going on. Now, you can believe it or not believe it. I have my marching orders. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. My hand's on the plow. No escape here. But that's why we've created, and that's why we're doing a special offer.
Yeah, and can you explain what's in the special offer?
Yeah. For your people, it's only available for listeners and followers of Janie DuVall. I mean, that's it.
Right, and there's a special link in the description. But yeah, explain what's in there, because it's amazing materials.
Because you can't find it on my website. It's not there. It's hidden away. It's only for this. So you get all 6 of the films in the series. So UFO Disclosure, Further Evidence. You get the book Further Evidence, which is this incredible book here. It's got some unbelievable stories. It's got lots and lots of photographs like this in it. Eyewitness testimonies. This is real journalism. Yours truly, L.A. Marzulli, went out and interviewed lots and lots and lots of people. And these interviews are all in the pages of this book, Further Evidence. You also get the book UFO Disclosure. And that's a must read, because it'll bring us up to speed. It'll bring you guys up to speed. So this is not available on our website. This is a special offer for Janie DuVall, and we're profit sharing here. So when you buy this, you're helping support what Janie does as well as us.
Well, I really want to thank you, LA, for this, and I'm excited about other programs we're doing, but I'm excited for people's eyes to be open, that Bible prophecy is unfolding before your eyes. So, okay, I'm going to have you back on another program. So thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Appreciate it.